My guest today is Rob Porter, founder of Let's Keep Rising. Rob is a guide, a storyteller, and a fellow traveler in the work of healing, curiosity, and becoming more wholehearted. Most men have learned to be hard on themselves. Few have learned to be kind. In this King's Row conversation, Rob shares his journey through father wounds and burnout and deep healing, and the surprising discovery that kindness is not weakness. It may be one of the strongest expressions of wholehearted masculinity that exists. If you've ever wondered how God meets us in our story and leads us toward freedom, this conversation is for you. Welcome to the King's Row, a space created for the weighty conversations between seasoned kingdom men exploring the significance and challenges of the masculine journey. A video podcast exploring the question, if men are a big part of the problem in the world, what would it look like if men could be a significant part of the solution? So in the hopes of inspiring men to be good kings, loving and leading in a wounding world, we rally to the proverb 25:2 that says, "It is the glory of God to conceal a matter, and the glory of kings to search it out." Here we go. Welcome, friends, to the King's Row. I'm Michael Thompson, and by that introduction, you get an idea of what this podcast show's about. It's about two men moving across the board, talking about what it is to become good kings, and what does it mean to our masculine journey, and to those that have been entrusted to us to love and to walk with. And so I have the opportunity in these next two episodes to walk with my younger king friend, Rob Porter. We met, man, in a decade ago. I can't believe it.
Quite literally.
2016, man. Do you want to fill in the color on how we met?
Oh, wow. So in 2016, me and a few friends from the UK, we flew over to Colorado to do a Become Good Soil retreat with Morgan Schneider. And Michael was one of the sort of facilitators there. And I just remember, Michael, there was a moment in one of the fire circle times, or the free time when guys get to wander around. I think I was on a porch or something, and I might have noticed you and just struck up a conversation. And
as you're so good at doing, yeah. Asked a couple questions, and we were off.
Yeah, and here we are 10 years later.
I know, man.
Asking more questions.
I know. It's crazy. Yeah, I remember that too. I was, and Morgan has been on the show, and we've had a wonderful time.
Awesome.
Talking, and so he's right there kind of in the middle of us, and was facilitating a weekend for 30 somethings to, look at the excavation, right, of their hearts, of their souls, of their masculine journeys. And you and your friends came in from overseas, and enjoyed that very much. Being a facilitator, men like you, I got to have three men. Wildly, right, Rob? Wildly, some of the men that were on John Eldridge's Wild at Heart documentaries, were men that were with us there. They've been walking with Wild at Heart, Ransom Heart, all this time. But we weren't in the same group, but that didn't stop us from connecting.
That's right.
Having some conversations, and you went back to the UK. I think the next we talked, we stayed in touch, but then I got to come over, and at that time, now you're in New Zealand, but you were in I think Richmond, right? Home of now Ted Lasso, Richmond, in the UK,
Yes. Yeah,
and
very close to there, exactly.
exactly. And we got to do a bunch of things that you became a bit of a tour guide for Robin and I. But we met PJ, and I think it was around my birthday, right? Didn't we? July. So we had I remember an Italian dinner in the UK with you and your
Mhm.
bride, and Robin
Mm.
and PJ became quick friends, and so
Mm.
we've had lots of calls and Zooms and different things through COVID, through other times of conversation. And then when did you leave? Well, I want to say something that also about our backstory. Some of those men that were at that Good Soil and other friends, you guys got to walk with me in the early formation of King Me and
Mhm.
explore the masculine journey together. That was we probably had 10 Zoom calls for an
Mhm.
hour each over a series of maybe 12 or 14 weeks.
Yes. That was
That
really
was
powerful.
it was so fun. It was so good for me, and I loved our time. Um, And then, yeah, I know you had your Abigail. I have an Abigail, and your Abigail refers to mine as the big Abigail.
Mhm.
And then there's Chloe, and who we got? PJ.
So we have my wife bringing me a coffee.
Oh, there
So
she is. We were just talking
that.
about you. We were just talking about your lovely wife. That's right.
Thanks, P.
Uh, and then along came Seth. Right? So
That's
there was
right.
Abigail, and so you were going through fatherhood at a stage and age that I had been, and now
Mm.
my
Mm.
children were older. But
Mhm.
yeah, we just had a lot to talk about all the time,
Mm. Mm.
and discoveries of the kingdom. You left the UK, now you're in New Zealand.
Yes.
Yeah, and talk a bit, if you would, about Rise.
Yeah. Oh wow. So it's a big story, really. But
It is.
I
It's
I
like
would
Zoe,
say,
as you asked me about Zoe, right? It's like, all right, how much time do you have? But yeah, this was something that
yeah.
was birthed in you, and that it took a while. It
Yes,
took
it
a
did.
bit,
Yeah. Yeah. So a
but
few threads for Rise. So God had been wooing my heart since I came to BGS, Become Good Soil, in 2016 in a very, really unique way and playful, quite frankly. And a big piece of it was through medieval history.
yeah,
And Michael, you know some of these threads. And I was reading some of these books, and one of them you have,
yep,
The Greatest Knight. So it's about a knight, medieval knight called William Marshall. And on the pages, it was just talking about bestowing to a knight. You know, when a knight becomes a knight, what it takes for him to get there,
hmm
and these rites of passage, and God was just speaking something deep into parts of me that became really activated and really noticed um, very acutely these trailheads, if you like, and to the point of me and my wife were going to a wedding in London, and my wife went to the church to go for a pre-rehearsal because we were friends with the people getting married, and William Marshall's tomb is in the
hmm
church, and it's just these little, well, huge
that's
threads,
a
you know.
huge thread. I
It's
mean,
it. I mean,
what are the odds, right?
yeah. and and all these films, Michael, just really became alive to me. You know, Gladiator, Braveheart, The Kingdom of Heaven.
Hmm.
All these films where men have gone through this crucible or this deep transformation and returned differently from where they were.
hmm Yeah.
And I wouldn't have been able to be able to say that at the time, but I sensed that that was the case for me, that I'd begun this deep journey, this deep process
Hmm.
of becoming. And God was using these pieces like Wild at Heart, meeting Michael, medieval history, and the list goes on.
Yeah.
And so I began to rise, if you like, to move through and revisit stages of my masculine journey that were either unfinished, stages I didn't even know about.
Right.
And I was just receiving. And I'm so grateful that he took me on that journey in that specific way, as he does for each of us.
Yeah.
Um, and that kind of led to your question of maybe 3 years ago, Michael. I sensed since 2016, there was about an 8 year period where it was all seemingly receiving, excavation, deep internal inquiry. And then 2023, I felt the words, "Go for it, son, I'm with you." And this is when I was starting to percolate like, the beginnings of maybe offering, the beginnings
Yeah.
of maybe coming alongside other people. And so it was this external invitation where previously it was all internal work,
Hmm.
and thus begun a trailhead of Let's Keep Rising, which is a vehicle of initiation for me, for my heart, where I
Hmm.
get to play and explore and try things and then offer through retreats or fires, just coming alongside others and offering. So
Yeah.
I'll just pause there for now. But yeah,
Yeah.
there's a few threads.
Yeah. Yeah. I love a lot about that. I remember the conversations of transition from primarily receiving, which it didn't mean you weren't giving or offering then, but there was a shift in in um, in your desire to create some of the environments for others to um, be invited to see some of the things that you had discovered with God. And I remember I don't think I felt, Rob, like finally as much as I felt absolutely. It was because when you start to offer, it's a whole other component of initiation, a whole other
Yes.
component of maturity. And
Mm, mm.
you put your first invitations out there. Will anyone come?
Right.
And what does that mean if they don't? Uh,
Yes.
I mean, there's just other ways than in which to walk with God when you're the one sending the invitations out as opposed to receiving them. And then
Mm,
I think about how um, what you said about receiving. Um, there's another element of that is somehow correlated with letting go. You
mm,
let go of something in order
mhm,
to receive something else. And I think you've done that, beautifully over the last decade plus. And could you speak just a little bit you said something about unfinished. We have explored our father history, father wounds, have come through a bit of the crucible with that, in the place where we can honestly say that they did what they could. They did maybe the best that they could, but we also know their stories, and that's been, I think, the critical key to being able to say that about
mm,
our fathers. Who, if you know their story and you know our grandfathers, their dads' stories, you start to
mm,
put some pieces together and realize, yeah, they didn't have a lot of initiation, validation, in a variety of different ways. And I'm talking about fathers and grandfathers in general. And yet, yeah, there were things that were unsettled
Mm,
in our lives, in our
mm,
hearts from young. And I got to hear a lot of your story. We got to exchange a lot of stories
mm,
in that way.
mhm,
So maybe if you could you articulate something that needed to be let go to make room in your masculine heart in order to receive? Do you have anything come to mind from your story along those lines?
mm. I think the story that comes to heart is when I returned back to the UK in 2016. This area of the father wound was really resonating, and it was quite acute to me. It had been opened. This sort of door had been opened, which I hadn't visited in much detail before. And I remember getting off the plane, Michael, and I kid you not, I received a message from my biological dad
Wow.
to the
Wow.
to the effect of saying, "Have a nice life." And I remember showing PJ this message, and I was just like dumbfounded, a bit bewildered, a bit confused, disorientated. I was like, "What on earth do I do with that?" And so, we prayed, we moved toward my dad, and we had this beautiful image of just these roses, these red petals being put on a floor, and a path being laid for me to walk to him. And I went to him. I spent some time with him. I recorded our session in secret because I was a bit concerned that, man, is this one of the last decent conversations I might get the opportunity to have with my dad? And he was just living under and in a lot of lies and distortion, and
Right.
he didn't
Mm,
have anybody around him to give him perspective, or to offer, or to be kind to him and to help him with what he was experiencing, which I think was the early signs of dementia, I believe.
mm,
But I remember drawing a line in the carpet, and I said, "Dad, let's cross this line together." And we did this, and it was great for a while, and then the behavior started to revert back.
mm.
And so that's the moment, I think, where I began to speak to a therapist, this beautiful lady in the UK, for a few years. And to your question, that really helped orientate me. It was a piece of a few pieces. It was just the kindness of God to enable me to release my dad in healthy ways that I needed to, and not believe, or start to believe, or take hold of that it's my fault, or
Mm,
I've done something wrong,
mm.
and taking responsibility and carrying that for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And so that's just an example of where I traversed something, and the outcome enabled me to continue to walk that path even today in a bit of a
Yeah.
more healthy way.
Yeah. 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 I appreciate that. I think the letting go of either the sadness, the anger, frustration, even the pain that can whatever can come alongside of those wounds and father wounds, particularly the things that maybe we didn't get that we should have. I think is a whole. I think that's actually a much larger category sometimes. I think actually most of the time than some of the either maybe harsh or unkind things that we did get. Those are hurtful too. But when you think of validation and initiation, it's how powerful that is for male or female image bearers. That that um, that deficit, like you said, can you said it earlier, can be even harder to kind of locate what I'm missing, what I didn't get, and how do we let that go,
Hmm.
even to find out that we have a desire for it, but we just kind of learn to live with it, the some of the hurt. Um, and yeah, I remember, knowing in your backstory that your dad and had, I think there was a divorce when you were 10, 12.
No, it was actually when I was 0. So I was under 1 years old. Yeah.
Under one, I forgot.
Yeah. Yes.
So yeah, and he came back in when? How old were you when you got to
Well,
really connect with him?
yeah, I mean, I used to see him every second weekend,
Okay,
growing up. So that's kind of my normal.
that was the normal.
Yeah, yeah, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And did your mom remarry?
She did, and so I grew up with both a stepdad and a biological dad, and so yeah, it was interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, it was a big piece of that for me, and it's only come through being curious about my story and walking with God that I realized it. But because there was some trauma around, when I was born and the relationship dynamic and a few pieces there that weren't healthy, um, I to this day have or notice when big things go on in life, there's a part of me that gets pretty scared, a young,
Hmm.
really young part, and needs
Hmm.
reassurance. And I
Hmm.
think that was a piece in my story where I didn't feel perhaps safe as I ought to have.
Yeah, especially if you're saying it's young or younger. That's really often a boy needs to know that he's protected, and couldn't even describe it when he's a boy. But as you look back, it's
That's
it's
right.
something that
Exactly.
sounds like God and you are looking at that, maybe untangling some of that. We have done a lot of work together. We've done a lot of story work. We actually got to go back and be co-facilitators, which was one of the favorite things I've gotten to do with you. That and sitting under the big trees at Richmond Park, um, and your when you were in the UK. But yeah, I just would love for you to talk a bit about the significance, the importance of story work in the masculine journey, how that has been crucial
Mhm.
to you, to us, and
Mhm.
why it's something that you, um, yeah, offer appropriately in
Mhm.
circles of men.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, I liked your word there, Michael. Crucial, because I would agree. Um, we have these monthly fires just in the back of my home, and it's all about story and seeing and listening to another story and being able to share a story of parts in your life. And I feel like they're keys.
Mhm.
Where do men get the opportunity these days to have someone ask them a question about their story, or for them to even go to a place in their story that they've not visited before, or that it's been a while, and for other men to realize, what this guy's saying over here has actually unlocked something in my story.
Hmm.
Like me getting to know you and hearing
Yeah,
your story, your experience with your daughters, Michael, the
right,
story around it and the
right.
texture. You taught me this some years ago now about creative writing, and you gave us an exercise of like, think about the texture and the smells and to put more articulation to something.
Hmm. I like adjectives and adverbs, man. I do. Yeah, yeah, and to have, I think a lot of men, they're not hesitant because they're afraid to tell their story. I think they're hesitant more because they don't know how. To your point, they have not been invited and even encouraged to, um, even be in that dialogue where you, if there's a good guide, that can put their finger on a few phrases, or hey, you said this about your mom.
Mm,
Could you say some more about that? And even you said the word wooing earlier. It's a great word to woo men even into answering in part the question, what did happen to me?
mm,
What is my story? Um, and yeah, how has it impacted me? How has it affected me? Because you're right. There's just it's every day is a few pages of a story, and very
mhm,
seldom do we look back
mm.
and and look at those chapters that might have shaped some of the things that might need to be let go, so we could receive something much better. And the story work is very, very critical to that.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. I think of John Eldridge in Times Gone that he said, if you want to get to know a man, you need to know their story.
Right. Right.
So it's a way of being known, like truly, truly being
Yeah.
known.
We just finished, Rob, a series. Caleb, who produces this, and some of my friends, we just finished a Zoom initiative called Father Matters, and it's about fatherhood, and some of these are friends that have been with us. Some new guys always showing up, but a pretty good mob. I mean, 70 some guys, showing up, and we talk about, even in fatherhood, about you need to know your children's story. What is it? What are your kids going through? Whether they're 4, 5, 6, or 24, 25, 26, or
Hmm.
34, 35, 36. And I think there's a foundation to that kind of fathering that actually starts with you and your story. Do you know what happened to you? If you even have the ability to dialogue or talk with your parents about some of the particulars of moving. I remember when we moved, we moved one time. I was in seventh grade, and it was an uprooting. And I remember asking, to this point, I was curious, and so I had some questions to ask my dad about the move from the West Coast, back to the Southwest. And I said, "Yeah, how was that for you?" And I was so surprised to hear him say, "It was really hard."
Mm.
I said, "Really?" I I had no idea. It was really hard for me. I felt I left the teams and the schools and the friends that I knew, and I was a bit lost. He said, "Yeah, I remember. We were all a bit lost." But then I
Mm.
also felt, Rob, like, well, why didn't you help me? You why did we didn't really talk about it like that? I mean, I'm having a conversation almost 40 years later, but it was so interesting how it touched a part of me that just needed to hear that my dad felt a bit lost too, and that we
Mm.
we
Mm.
all were struggling to kind of find in this new environment where we fit. It's just fascinating that it could be 40 some years later, and his words comforted me
Yes.
in that exploration. I didn't know, what he was going to say, but what he did say was something that I could see and receive and appreciate from him. It was something God was tending to, as I was trying to find the context of our story, and he was in it too. And we ask this question all the time: what are the odds we've interpreted our stories, our lives accurately? And it just was evidence again that
Mm.
there were some missed details that made a difference even 40 years later.
Yes.
You know, wild. And yeah, still very um, I like what you said about being curious and living in a posture of that. Could you talk some more about that? How that has aided, or
Mm,
how that has been, what's the word I want? How that has supported you in your masculine journey, being curious. What do we mean by that?
mm,
What do you mean by that?
hmm. Yeah, curiosity is it's kind of a pillar or a bedrock word for me, because in any circumstance, whether you lose your job, or you're having an argument with your wife, or whatever it is, to swap, let's say, anger or whatever the big
Mm.
emotion is for being curious, like, yeah, I wonder what is going on here. Or you're just stopping to be curious, you're stopping to wonder, you're stopping at like a crossroad where you have some options, and perhaps some of those options you haven't considered before. And so curiosity for
Yeah.
me enables me to stop and wonder and see if there are any more options that
Mhm.
that my heart actually needs, and that what might be more true than the big emotion or the big circumstance or whatever, being
Or
curious.
the initial interpretation, of PJ's intention, or my wife Robin, and or what she I think that is a very, very helpful tool to be able to practice curiosity, because there's a confession built into it that I'm not sure I know what's going on. I'm not sure that I know what you meant when you said that or did that.
Exactly.
I mean, I get to, regularly walk with a couple or two in their marriage, and I mean, it's a very dangerous thing to assume that you know. That's what I want to say.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
Intentions. Um, well, I know what he was thinking. He was thinking da 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 da. Da. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
Or I know where she's what she wanted. She was. It's just very. I mean, even when I use that way, that's how
Mm,
it feels like yuck. I mean,
yeah. Yes.
uh,
So I would
it
say, Michael, just to add on to curiosity, I think curiosity is kind.
very, amen. So
Yeah,
good.
it's very kind.
Okay,
Because as
for
you
who?
say,
For who?
eh,
For
for
who?
who? For
Yeah,
everyone.
for for everyone. Oh,
Yeah,
for everyone. Absolutely. Yeah. You had a thought though. Go ahead. Yeah. Keep
I
going.
think um, being curious also evokes questions. And
Yeah.
so when you and I met, for example, man, I was curious. I was like, man, look at these guys. Like I don't think I've met men like this before. And I was in my early 30s at this time, living in London. And, there's a lot of young people living in London at the time, very, very thin on the ground with
Mm,
safe, older role models or mentors or people that would even know the landscape of what it means to come alongside. And
mm,
so, where do you go if you're in
yeah.
that place, like many of us around the world right now?
Yeah.
And I just felt like, not that I'd won the lottery, but it was like this Narnian door.
Yeah.
Like, who are these people? How did they get there?
Yeah. Yeah. And fascinating about some of that 2016 time, as I was in a circle with some of the guides. And there was a number, I don't know, 20, 25 guides, 25 groups, 100 guys, maybe. Um, three guys in a group with a guide. And yeah. some of the guides, we were going through things, you know, they they were the guides, and yet they weren't all put together. It wasn't all successful in certain terms. It was no, it
Hmm.
was it was difficult. I think I was going through my third or fourth financial crisis as a man in
Mm.
2016, and then
Mhm.
another one in 2019, another one in 2020. I mean, there's just these things, and my kids are in the same. You have three, I have three, and there's odds are that one of them's not doing great at a given time or in a
Mm.
season. And it was true of the guides. um, there were some that were going through bankruptcy, some that hadn't talked to their kids, and yet there they are, not disqualified as guys, but rather, um, yeah, weathered,
Mhm.
trained by adversity, um, not knowing, even how it was to go, and yet they were there to come alongside younger men,
Mm. Mhm.
and not say that if you do these things, it will be great, but rather, hey, these are the things to do no matter what. This is the way to be no matter how it's going to go, because
Mhm.
intimacy with God, learning how to sort out some of the emotions, feelings. I love the curiosity piece, because like just to even be curious with you said that story earlier about the young part. I mean, goodness, to even identify that, Rob, is quite the exploration. To
Mhm.
come to that, I don't want to say conclusion too early, but to come to that awareness, or that sense that when big things happen, there's a young part of me that kind of cowers, or or hides until it seems to either have passed or it's safe to come out. I mean, that's a fascinating thing to sense and feel. And then can you curiously, right, and kindly use
Mhm.
those words, curiously and kindly, can you, with Jesus, tend to that part of you? Can it be, to use a term that we believe, can it be integrated? Can it be welcome? Can it be held and be okay? That, yeah, it's a big thing. It's okay to be
Mm.
concerned or afraid, but we're okay.
Mm.
you know um, so curiosity and kindness, and
Mhm.
kindness and curiosity, I think, is a very powerful
Mm.
combination, and one that I believe very much that's something that you have, when you put your tool belt on every day. It's on, those are on in your tool belt, if they haven't been stolen or taken in the night. I think that's a way that you've learned to live. It's served you.
Mm.
It's a
I
way
think
Jesus operated, very much.
what's really interesting, Michael, is that there's a perception that I've heard a number of men say that they can sometimes perceive kindness as weakness. So,
Mm.
you know, not having it all together, not knowing what to do, no, this sort of weakness, this element of weakness, and actually, it's the complete opposite.
Yeah.
Kindness is a superpower essentially.
Strong
It's a
thing.
real strength, and I think,
Yeah.
as you know more than I, because you have more miles than me on the odometer.
Mhm.
um, how do you learn kindness? That
Yeah.
adversity, being stripped, humbled, going through seasonalities of life. I'm thankful that I'm becoming a kinder person through it all. The trajectory of my investment on kindness is going up,
Mhm.
and I'm really grateful for that.
I wanna take this is a good place to land. Boom. I wanna bring kindness to the beginning of our next episode, and just stay in that conversation, because I think there's some more to mine there. You said the question, how do you do that? Right? How do you learn that? How do you therefore and practice that? I want to land, and maybe that'll be a little intriguing invitation for our friends and listeners to join us in the next episode, because I have some questions for you about kindness that I want to drill down into, because I think you're onto something. I know you are, and I want to live that way as well. Let's save that for part 2. So yeah, this is Michael Thompson on the King's Row with my my British Kiwi friend Rob Porter of over a decade or so walking in the kingdom together, and I look forward to our next conversation, Rob. I really, really appreciate you making the time to be on the King's Row today.
Yeah, me too, brother. It's such an honor, and I just love seeing your face here this morning in New Zealand.
Yeah, let's keep going. Okay, so we'll see you next time on the King's Row, friends, with Rob Porter. In the game of checkers, the King's Row refers to the farthest row on the game board from a player's starting position. When a player's man reaches the opponent's King's Row, that man may be crowned or kinged. The concept of King's Row is crucial in the strategy of the game. The more kings a player has, the greater the advantage he has over his adversary.